Hi, I'm Amy. I'm here with Rob Weinstein, and we're going to be discussing in a series of videos tips and tricks to help your businesses grow and increase your revenue. Today we're going to be discussing business systems. So Rob, business systems, that's a big term when it comes to business in general.
Business systems is a pretty big subject, but the idea behind business systems is kind of where you want to run your company as if it's a franchise, even if you have no intention of franchising it. And this is spelled out very clearly in my favorite book. It's The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. And what he says is, even if you have no intention of franchising, the idea as to why franchises work is because they have systems in place. So if you look at the statistics, franchises tend to survive much longer than mom and pops without franchises. So it's around 85% of franchises will survive past the first 5 years, where 85% of non-franchises fail before they pass the 5-year mark. And the difference is not just branding and things. People always think, oh, well, it's McDonald's, so they have the logos and all that. But it's even the smaller print press and other franchises that survive, and it's because they have business systems in place. So procedures that deliver the same results always. And whether or not you like McDonald's, their food,
Right.
One thing is certain is that you're always going to get the same quality food no matter where you go in the world, and they're getting that out of teenagers, that this is probably their first job. And you can only monitor quality control like that through the use of systems that squirt the right amount of ketchup onto a bun, cook it for the right amount of time, things like that. So when we talk about systems in the party rental business, it's how are you answering your phone? Are the people that are answering the phone scripted? Are they following a procedure? The only way to know if your sales script is working is to memorize it, use the same script every time, and then try changing it and see if you close a higher or a lower percentage of sales. So the idea is you're always split testing different business approaches, always trying to make it a little bit incrementally better. And that goes true for the delivery drivers as well. So how do they greet the customers when they come to deliver the equipment, and how are they dressed? One of the famous studies that was done around IBM, the reason why they called them Big Blue is because their salespeople were always in blue blazers. And they did a study, and they showed that a very neatly dressed person, sales guy in a brown suit, versus a neatly dressed guy in a blue blazer, which one had a higher success rate? And it was a considerable difference. The blue blazer always won. So if you know that a certain approach to business is more successful than another, why would you ever allow the substandard approach to be used in your company? So that's the goal with any company, is to set up a series of systems that you can follow so you can see the metrics that follow with that system, and then try tweaking it and see if it helps. And if you're inconsistent, then tweaking it you can't track the differences and see if things are heading in the right direction. So if you know that if your delivery guys are always in polos, you get a higher survey score than if you send them out in t-shirts, then you shouldn't let your guys ever go out in a t-shirt, right?
Makes sense.
And if there are certain ways that you know that you increase your add-on sales, you should do it every time, not when the mood strikes you. It should be required. So that's why we talk about business systems. It creates a consistent, measurable result that you can then test against different approaches.
Hi, this is Amy. I'm here with Rob Weinstein, co-owner of Event Rental Systems, and I'm here to talk about cash flow projections, tips and tricks to help your business become even more successful than it already is. So Rob, tell me a little bit about cash flow projections and business, sizing up businesses and their value.
So cash flow projections are used to size up a company, and certainly they're useful once you're already up and running. Anytime that you're planning a major change in your business, you should probably go back to a spreadsheet with a cash flow projection. And all it is, in the most basic sense, is you put your expected income, and underneath it you break down your expenses into as many categories as you can. Inevitably, there will be more expenses than you ever think of. Mm-hmm. There'll be little things like, oh yeah, we spilled something, so now we have to buy a cleaner and we need more rags, or something will always come up. But by breaking it down into more parts, you're going to end up with a more accurate picture, is what I've found. And what I do is I always do my cash flow projections by month. So I'll say, all right, this is the first month that we're going to start looking at this, and it's January, so I'm not expecting much. So I'll put a number in there for what I think the number of rentals are. And then you can get a little bit fancier with time. So what I do is, for those sales, rather than just putting in a dollar amount, I'll say how many rentals and what is the average ticket, what is reasonable to assume, and that way I can do what-if statements. So then over on the side, I have that cell looking over here in Excel saying, so by looking at that number over here, if that feeds in over into your number of sales, sure, you can adjust that number and play what-if statements. So what if I had 25 rentals that month versus 10 rentals that month versus 200 rentals that month, and multiply that by an average ticket, whatever that ticket you think it's going to be. If you're already in business, then you're going to know those numbers. But if you're just looking at a new business, you're going to have to take educated guesses on these things and break down your expenses, and then whatever money you have at the end of the month, whether that's positive or negative, floats over to the next month, and you keep going down. And I do a 12-month projection, and I assume that some months will be better than others, and I play with the numbers accordingly. And then I am a big proponent of setting up 3 of those. So it's a best case scenario, what you expect will happen, and a worst case scenario. No. So if you're looking at a new branch out of your company, you want to add something new, this is a good way to get an idea as to whether or not you think it's going to work. If you're brand new and looking at a new startup, it'll give you an idea as to what you might expect. A lot of companies, they say, well, if I buy this equipment and it only goes out once a month, no big deal, I'm still making money on it. But they don't take into account of, oh yeah, I still have to pay for internet, I still have to pay for a website, still have to pay for a phone service so that it's not getting mixed in with my personal calls. The bank charges money, the credit card company charges a monthly fee. So you could actually, if you only got one jump, if you're in the inflatable industry, if you set it up as a real business, you might have enough overhead that even if you got one rental a month, you're actually in negative cash flow. Sure. So it's important to go through all those scenarios and look at it and go, am I safe? And my rule of thumb is even the worst case scenario should look pretty good. And if it doesn't look pretty good, then you're probably looking at a bad business model. So I like to see a worst case scenario still looking like, all right, I'm not going to lose my shirt. If I had to, I could sell off the equipment and not lose a lot of money. Sure. That would be a worst case scenario. If your expected requires that you have a lot of positive cash flow for it to work, probably not a safe business model. Right. That's been my experience. And these cash flow projections can do some really interesting things. At one point I was looking at getting a brick and mortar for our rental business, and the rent for the building wasn't all that much, and you could say, well, you just need X number of rentals in order to pay for that. But then when you start breaking it down and say, oh, but if I have that many more rentals, that means I need more vehicles to deliver it, which causes more overhead and insurance for those vehicles. And it wasn't just the cost of the delivery, it created more expenses that went along with it. And what seemed like a very simple, pretty safe thing to do in the beginning caused this domino effect in the cash flow projection. And it just showed up as a little negative number. It was like 1 month it was negative several $100s or something. But when I went back in, and I had some business people look at it, and they said, oh, no, it's fine, just go for it. And I was going, yeah, but those negative numbers really bother me. Let me look at it a little closer. And when we really examined what it would take to get rid of the negative numbers, created this domino effect where we needed an extra $50,000 in cash up front, and created this huge cash flow problem to get rid of those little negative numbers. And it's one of those things that you would never see if you didn't put it into a spreadsheet. So I view this as necessary homework for any business, regardless of what you're about to do. You should put it on paper and ask yourself the tough questions. You know, is this really reasonable in this market? Hi, I'm Rob Weinstein with Event Rental Systems, and this week's tip is talking about analysis paralysis. And what I mean by that is sometimes when people are looking at starting a new business or maybe even expanding their current business, they're scared to pull the trigger. And I'm not suggesting that you should go without due diligence. You should always do the cash flow projections that we've discussed in the past. You should always talk to other people that are in the industry and get a good feel for what you're doing. But once you've done your homework, a lot of people are scared to just do it. And this is me telling you your call to action is just do it. Once you know and feel in your heart that you got the right business plan in place, go ahead and buy your inventory and start something up. Entrepreneurship is a lonely venture in that a lot of people can't relate, but it really is quite rewarding in that you get some more flexibility in your time, and you have a much higher income potential as well. So my rule of thumb is to always look at business investments with a 5-year rule, which is if everything fell flat on its face, will it affect you down the road in 5 years? And if the answer is no, then you shouldn't even hesitate. If the answer is yes, then you should look at it a little more carefully, but still go ahead and pull the trigger once you know that you're on the right track. So there's your tip for the week. Take some action.